I saw him today though in his pink shirt. He looks good.
Oh yeah, he looks handsome, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Filling out the biceps. Maybe it was the cheat meal.
Maybe.
Cheat meals. Maybe he's DJ Webbing it. DJ Webb always just would say he's on a plan. I was like, what plan is this? To be off your diet 80% of the time? Like, I don't.
DJ Webb is the funniest guy, man. At the Arnold, after we had dinner, we go into the shop. I think I was picking up some lotion. He's like, let's get some ice cream. I'm like, I don't know if I want some. He's like, nah, just eat it. It's fine. I'm like, okay, I'll take some ice cream. And then he buys 2 for himself. He gives one to Smokey, but that man, he just eats. He loves to eat.
Well, so it was good. So I think this was after the first, this had to have been the second night. We're out and everyone's at the bars, like at the hotel, everyone just likes to hang out there. And we're walking around, we go into the store to get water. And this is after that night that we had all that dessert at that restaurant.
Yeah.
We had a cake the size of that whole table. We went nuts. And then we passed by the little freezer. I'm like, all right, dude, like we don't drink, like we don't party, like let's do this. And so we got more ice cream after all of that crap that we ate. So we got chocolate wasted.
That was the last night, right?
No. So
the
last night was the night that we hung out in the room, and that's when you change your name.
Yeah.
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 But DJ actually had a really good poop story.
Did he change his name before or after the sex?
After.
I thought it was during.
It was life-changing.
I couldn't do that during. It was intense.
There was a lot of people. There was a lot of people in that room. So I think while you were taking a break, yeah,
just running a train in there or what?
Super training. Yeah. All day.
You should have seen DJ though on I think it was the last dinner that we had. Remember we got all those desserts, right? Apparently. And then everyone had a little bit of it, but then everyone's talking and you just look at DJ and DJ's just over here with his spoon. Just just still going at every single little dessert and just eating it slowly.
And then Jessica had ordered a salad and she's like, "Oh, this is gross," and she just kind of left it. And then as soon as she stood up, "Hey, give me that salad." And then Ryan was like, well, I mean, she might come back and eat it, and he's like, "Oh, okay."
Is there any mouse jokes to Jessica about her salad? Jessica and
I totally missed it. That's right. No, I forgot.
We went to eat one day. We got lunch at Burgers and Brew in Sacramento. She ordered a salad, and there was a dead mouse in her salad.
You're kidding.
No, I swear to God. It was horrifying. It was probably like about 6 months ago or so. Yeah, I haven't been there. I haven't been there since, to say the least.
What? First of all, you guys need to tell us these things.
I know.
We like Burgers and Brew.
I know. So do I.
Oh my God!
You ruined it for me.
You didn't even take a picture or anything. You're just like dead mouse now.
No, you know what? Like so.
I can understand.
Yeah,
it could hurt that business. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's weird. So I thought about it, but I was like, that's like overkill. So, I mean, probably should have just to have like record of it. But I mean, they saw. I mean, there's no mistaking what happened, right? They saw what happened. Plus, I've known the owners of that facility for a long time, so it was like.
It's probably an oversight, like an accident.
I mean, clearly no one's trying to like give anybody that, kind of shit. And I think they got shut down for a few days and stuff like that. So I think they got some sort of punishment for it, and hopefully that never happens again to anybody else. But
yeah,
one of the guys that I know that owns a restaurant, he just said that you have to check everything that you get for stuff like that because of where stuff gets shipped from. It usually comes from warehouses, and even like vegetables and stuff will get bagged and it will get, and so you just have to check everything that you order, whether it's like straws or paper plates or paper cups or anything disposable. Like it's possible that there's a mouse in there because it comes from a warehouse.
Yeah.
So he's like, the damn thing could have came from nearly anywhere, So yeah, it was just an unfortunate situation, but we, a few of the guys in here tease her about it, but I was there, so I don't ever actually mess with her about it because it was tragic. It was like you get like PTSD from that from that kind of thing. It was pretty wild.
Yeah, there's this sushi restaurant. I think it was like Blue Nami or something. There's multiple Blue Namis, but a guy took a video and he took a video of his fish, and there are like these worms that were crawling around on it.
Brutal.
And he did post it up, and it went viral for that specific location. It was bad, but yeah, that stuff gets you scared of like eating out in general, because that's not just that's just not that spot. That happens in a bunch of different places. It's just like someone doesn't always mention it. So
we ran into at the Arnold. There's something I forgot to bring up on our last episode where we talked a lot about the Arnold, but so many things happened I kind of forgot. But I ran into Brian Alsrew. I think that's how you say his last name.
Yeah.
And Brian's been a good friend. He's somebody that's been here at Super Training. He's been on the podcast before. Former strongman athlete, and now he just runs his own gym and trains people and stuff. And he works with many disabled kids and things like that. He's a guy that like gives back. He's a guy that he's a coach. He's a strength coach, and he's a guy that cares about a lot of other people. Unfortunately, he's been very sick, and you see this kind of stuff happen quite a bit with people that they care for other people so much. Sometimes they forget about their own health, and you see it a lot with moms and dads where they. Brian's actually sick. He's not just like heavy or anything like that. But you see that a lot with people. They kind of forget about their health because they're so concerned about, their kid going to school, and their kid going to soccer practice, and their kid doing A, B, and C. And then they forget about their kind of own nutrition. They get lost in everything else that everyone else is doing. Yeah. And Brian is that kind of guy, but unfortunately he's been very ill, and they don't know what's wrong. He's had a lot of tests done. And, he was telling me, he said he vomits like 30 or 40 times nearly every day. He'll just be driving and he'll just like barf, and he has all these digestion problems and things like that. And all the way to the point where he ends up getting like seizures and all kinds of crazy things. It was really sad.
God.
And I said, Brian, I know like not every single, but I know some of the best nutrition people in the world. I know some doctors that are really, really high level. And I think, between some of these people I think, at least one of them be able to help you. So he and I have been in contact, and I've been kind of bouncing around. So first of all, I looked everything up on the internet and was trying to find some stuff. It was kind of hard. It was pretty elusive to find information. But some of the stuff that I found led me to find, the people that travel a lot or military personnel can end up getting like really ill. They can get diseases and stuff from the travel. And so I didn't remember whether he was in the military or not, but I asked him, and he said, yeah, he was in the military for a few years, and he traveled the world. And I was like, okay, that fits the profile of what some of these other people are saying. Mm-hmm. And who knows what the hell he has? It's hard to really just say flat out, but there were some other cases of this, and it seems like a growing thing. And I was like, man, I've never heard of that before in my life, of people just vomiting all day long, really, And so then I kind of was poking around with some friends and asking different people for some information, and I contacted Joel Green and contacted my friend Daniel Orego. Those are both people that have been on this podcast. They had some suggestions. But most of the suggestions that they recommended were things that he kind of already tried, which was like fasting and really limiting his foods and things like that. He just can't hold anything down, and so then I contacted Gabrielle Lyon, who's been on the podcast as well, and she's like, he's got a worm, 100%. She's like, I'll just tell you right now, I think he's. And so, I was like, holy shit. So I put her in contact with Brian, and, hopefully she's able to get him some testing and stuff. But she said you can get a lot of tests done with this kind of stuff and it doesn't show up. Nothing shows up.
Yeah.
So it's really gross to think about, but it's one of those things where you just have no idea what's going on in your body. And he's been tested for cancer, and he's been tested for all these other things, and everyone's just kind of scratching their head. But when I hear that, when somebody tells me something like that, I'm always like, okay, that's a bunch of bullshit, because nearly everything that's ever happened in medical history has kind of already happened. To some degree, right? There's some version of it. Some doctor has seen it or knows something about it. Mm-hmm. And so I'm always thinking, okay, let's find a solution. Let's find somebody. And same thing with fitness, and same thing with strength. There's always going to be somebody that has seen something before. Somebody might want to come back from a ACL tear, and they want to squat 1,000 pounds again. And one coach will say that's impossible, and there'll be a coach that's seen that before.
Yeah.
And they'll say, bullshit, we can do that. Here's what we got to do. And so it's important that you find, if you are sick or you have something going on like that, that you get as many tests as needed until you figure out what the hell's wrong. I think in Brian's case, he was just so fed up with it. He's been sick for the last maybe about 2 years, and he's just been so upset by it, and it's been really impacting his day-to-day that I think, not that he's like given up, but I think he was just like, this is what I got. I got something wrong with me, and I don't know what's going on, and no one else seems to be able to figure it out. But luckily enough, we were able to get him, squared away for now. Hopefully, they can kind of figure out what is wrong, and then they can treat him. But Gabrielle was saying that there's only like one doctor in the world that can even test for what he might have. Mm-hmm. And I was like, damn, that seems crazy. That seems wild, And so,
she was the only person, did he say that she was the only person to suggest that it was a worm of some kind? He's never heard that from any other doc?
Correct.
I had a friend, like a long time, like not even too long ago. Her dad lost like 30 or some odd pounds in a 6-month period, even though he was eating all the same amount of food, and he even tried eating more. They found out it was because he had like some parasites in his system that he had to get rid of. So
it's a lot more common than you think, and I think, as disgusting as it is to think about, I think a lot of us have that stuff in us, and maybe it's not like active, and maybe it's not harming us, but if you eat sushi and if you've traveled the world, the odds of you having something gross going on is probably pretty high, or even just raw food. Period.
Yeah.
So it's a disgusting topic. Anyway, let's get on to something else. But it was good to be able to help a friend out like that. Brian was super appreciative, and like I said, hopefully we get him set in the right direction. And Gabrielle was really kind. She's like, any friend of yours is a friend of mine. She's like, I'll treat him for free. So she's like, all you got to do is, get his ass over here, and we'll look at him and figure everything else out. Shifting gears, we're going to talk today a little bit about training. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Natty Professor's training and how he's mixing in some jiu-jitsu and some fasting and ripping up a 725-pound deadlift. But before I get to that, this is something that we celebrate often here on this podcast, but I haven't mentioned it in a while. But it's not because it hasn't happened. It's just because I haven't mentioned it in a while. My wife texted me this morning, and she said, I'm not sure if it was the pizza last night or the sex this morning, but I had a great workout.
Nice.
Can I get a hey now?
Hey
Awesome.
now.
Good
Nice.
job.
Yeah. What an amazing text, right?
Yeah. Does she listen to this?
Not normally.
Not over.
So the text,
But she
awesome.
does know that I like a lot. I've mentioned on here a lot of times. Like I just randomly say, "Hey, we had sex last night, or we had sex today," because we're going on 20 years of marriage, and I think it's like,
shoot. That's what y'all
first,
do.
first of all, everyone should celebrate that all the time. It
Yes.
shouldn't be anybody. There's no reason to keep secrets around here. You might as well be happy about it. Might as well be excited about it, right?
Yeah.
But she knows I talk about it on the podcast. She's heard me say, and she doesn't care. She's like, whatever.
Okay, that's good. But you guys ate pizza last night?
Yeah, we did.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay. See.
My son, we're watching Breaking Bad, and I was telling my wife, I'm like, you're just like this woman on this show, whatever.
Wait, Walter's wife?
Yeah, Walter's wife.
Oh no! Don't Rita's the worst character in that
No,
show.
I know that she goes downhill a lot more than we're on like season 2. So.
Okay, so she's still all right.
Yeah, she's still all right.
man.
And right now, she's just like she's kind of like just a helicopter mom at this point.
Yeah.
And so I'm teasing my wife, and I'm saying, you're kind of like her, And my son's laughing. My son's like, yeah, you are kind of like her. And then she said something about in the show. Said something about, hey, we're gonna just order pizza tonight. And he looked at my son looked at my wife, and he said, that's something you never said before. We're just gonna order pizza tonight. She's like, all right, we'll order pizza tonight. And so we ordered pizza last night.
That was smart by Jake.
Yeah,
Egg her on.
that's right.
Yeah, Stephanie texts me. She's like, "Oh my God, I thought high-waisted pants were to like hide your waist, because she heard like
High-waisted
vagina pants, and I'm like, no, it's definitely that, but we were just joking and laughing at what Jesse said.
Yeah.
But now she's all concerned, like, oh my gosh, this whole time, like,
This whole time.
like, yeah, sorry, babe, it's been on display. And by the way, thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, it's good for you.
Yeah.
You get the view.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like you just want to go up to some of these girls and just say thank you.
Nope. It's not true.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Or like the Chappelle skit when he was walking around the city, and he's like, he had stickers that said you had great boobs, and he's like, you have great New York boobs, and he would just like put it on girls.
I forgot that skit. I've seen like every skit on Chappelle, but I forgot that one.
Yeah, it was him and Rogan just randomly got together and just walked around giving girls stickers that had great boobs.
Wow.
It's pretty funny. So maybe
Bold.
you have
Very
great
bold.
high-waisted vagina pants.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus.
So, Natty Professor, what's going on with these lifts you got going on? How are you able to, because I think you said you've lost about 12 to 15 pounds from last year, right?
Yeah, from last year. I think maybe last year, was it 2018? I think I was around 260 to 262 last year. And the year before that, when I started jiu-jitsu around 265. 265 has always been about like, I mean, not always, but for a few years of powerlifting, that was like my lifting weight. So that's where I performed the best. That's where I pulled 755. I mean, that's where I did my meet. I was like 265 to 267. It was harder for me to get heavier than that, but it took a little bit of cutting to get lighter than that. So when I did jujitsu, I wasn't even necessarily trying to get lighter, but because like over time, I started off at 3 days a week, then I wanted to continue to get better. So I went to 4 days, I went to 5 sessions. And with all of those sessions, I started to drop weight because, I mean, I was still trying to lift minimum 3 times a week while getting in all of those sessions each week. And now it's 6 to 8. So I dropped that weight over that period of time. And then fasting made it a little bit easier because I started fasting not necessarily for the benefit of the ease of having a caloric deficit. I started it mainly because I heard a lot of people mentioning how much more focused they felt. And like we've talked about, I was very food focused. So I would always be thinking of my next meal during the day, right?
Yeah, isn't it tough when you're hungry?
Yeah, it is, especially when you're trying to work. Like I have to work at a computer. I have a lot of like busy work I have to do at a computer in terms of programming
You're like,
and stuff.
shit, I'm hungry.
Exactly. You just think about that next meal. I'd be eating like, 4 good solid sized meals a day. So I was like, let me try out this fasting thing to see if it's going to allow me, because all of these people are saying I feel so much more focused.
Right. And almost no matter how you do it, you got, when you eat, you have, takes you 15 to 20 minutes to eat it. It's going to take some time to prep it. Even if you meal prepped, might take hours to prep a bunch of meals.
Yeah.
And even if you cooked it that day, then your 15-minute eating window has now become an hour-long thing because you cooked it and you ate it.
And the energy, like you feel, you do feel a little bit tired after you eat because now you're digesting that food. So it even affects your energy too.
You're slowed down, and you always have this idea that you're just going to eat a little bit so you can continue onward, but you never do. You always overeat every time.
Yeah. So that's why I started that. And then when I did start doing the fasting, I still ate a decent amount of food. I made sure to eat a lot in my feeding windows, but I started to notice that I was getting leaner and leaner and leaner. And then I pretty much now am stabilized around 242 to 250. I can have a range depending on my hydration on any certain day, and that's where I am now. That's where I feel really good in terms of my performance. I personally never did think that it would be possible for me to be able to perform at this level, being as lean as I currently am. I always thought that, okay, I'm gonna always need a decent amount of body fat, and not necessarily being really high in terms of body fat, but a decent amount to be able to actually, lift and do jiu-jitsu at the same time. But I'm finding that I'm able to, be leaner and leaner and perform well over time.
Have you ever been fat?
When I was younger, that time when I had to stop running because of my Auschwitz-Slaughter.
You got a little chubby.
Yes, I gained a lot of weight, and that was partially because I was eating a lot of food, and partially because I wasn't running and I was working out a lot. So I mean, I mentioned like I got up to around 200 by the time I was 16. That 200 was a lot of like muscle, but a lot of fat too. So when I started playing soccer again, I lost quite a bit of body fat, probably went down to maybe 185. And that's where I started. I was in better shape there.
Pictures of you, even when you're just a teenager, maybe even before you even started actually like lifting. I think maybe you're just doing soccer, or you may have started lifting shortly before that. But some pictures I've seen, you look pretty lean, and you look like you've always had some muscle mass on you?
Yeah. So there's a picture on my Instagram, and it's from senior year of high school. I was probably around like, that's when I think I was like, I reached my peak height. I was probably around 190 or something there. But that was after like, because I started playing soccer again when I was 16, so that was junior year. So after junior year is when I lost that bit of weight again. And senior year, I was pretty lean again. So, yeah, I did have all that muscle, but that's just because I started lifting when I was younger, which I'm very fortunate that I was able to start so young because of an accident. But that did help me out getting into the gym early on.
An advantage or a disadvantage? The fact that maybe you didn't have to, like, it seems to me, and I could be wrong, it seems to me like you lifted and then you learned a little bit about nutrition, and then you were jacked and tan. Do you think it's an advantage or a disadvantage, the fact that it came to you fairly quickly, or did it not even come to you fairly quickly?
Absolute advantage, because I always say that injury was one of the best things that really ever happened to me. If I didn't get injured then, I wouldn't have gotten to the gym so young. And then if I didn't get into the gym so young, I wouldn't have had the development I have currently.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. So even though you're gifted some good genetics for lifting and good genetics for getting in shape and being big and lean and everything, you had this injury that still forced you to learn about lifting, still forced you to get up off your ass and not be fat.
Yeah, exactly. Because like even when I went and my first year at college, when I was playing soccer there, and we did have, the weight room stuff, I knew how to, handle myself around a weight room, whereas my teammates really didn't know how to. And I was doing more stuff than the strength and conditioning coach over at the school had us do. And that's just because I was lucky enough to start lifting early. I had some cool people in my gym that I would like maybe stalk around without them realizing it and ask a few questions to learn like what to do in terms of lifting. I was super lucky. It is harder when it's not impossible, but it's a little bit, harder to push yourself when you're starting later in life. You have a job, you have all these other responsibilities, and now you want to start lifting. It's possible because lots of people have done it, but you got to push yourself more. I do. And if I didn't start then, I probably wouldn't be doing the work I am now.
Was it your mom that got you into lifting?
Yeah, we talked about this. It's because like when I got that injury, I got depressed. I wasn't active, so she had to find a way that would allow me to be active and do something that would have me get some energy out, and that was going to the gym because I couldn't run.
And you were kind of angry and stuff too, right?
Yeah.
At the time,
yeah, because I couldn't run. I wasn't going to soccer practice anymore. I wasn't able to, play with all my friends that did.
That's a great message, for people that are listening to the show that have kids. I mean, if you got a teenage son or daughter that's got a little extra energy, and maybe it's not always all positive, then take them to a boxing class, take them to karate, take them to jiu-jitsu, take them to go work out, take them to something. Figure out a way for them to move. Maybe all you can do is get them to go on some walks and get them to ride their bike or something. But man, movement will slow you down quite a bit, and it really does a lot. It does so much for your brain. There's actually a lot of research that shows, so we always think we're going to go to the gym and we're going to change our bodies. And really, the actual truth of it is you're going to go to the gym and you're going to change your mind. It's kind of more the truth of it. I mean, you're able to literally expand the cells in your brain from exercising. And you're able to tap into, if you just look at the YouTube channel, What I've Learned, has a really good piece in there where it talks a lot about that. And so we know that energy expenditure in the gym can be valuable, but we also know that it can possibly make up a smaller percentage than maybe we're anticipating. I think that we're thinking we're going to go in the gym and we're going to kill it and we're going to get the body that we want. But we know and we talk about it all the time here on this podcast. It takes a lot more than that. You know, they say it takes a village to raise a kid. Well, it takes a really, really crazy concerted effort to have the body that you want and to have the strength that you want. And so it's not just what you do in the gym. The diet is a huge part of it. The sleep is a huge part of it. The hydration is a huge part of it. That's when it starts to be, you're like, holy shit, you know, getting in shape is like a full-time job.
Yeah.
It's something
I heard
that
you
really
say that a few times.
Yeah, that really and for some people it might come a little bit more naturally. But at some point for every single person, it's going to take a more concentrated effort as you get older, as your body starts to kind of slow down. But you know, so you were able to drop some of this weight. You were 260, and now you're what, 240 something?
Yeah, ranging between between 242 250 any given day.
And then kind of randomly, you pulled that 725 deadlift recently.
Yeah.
What do you kind of contribute that strength to, other than the SARMs and other than the trend?
The SARMs and the trend. Okay.
We just have to get that out of the way, because that's what everybody's going to say, right?
Not true, by the way. But SARMs and trend. Now, what do I contribute that strength to? Well, I mean, obviously, I did a lot of powerlifting before. I did a lot of lifting in general before. In terms of like the movements I really like doing, I love the pen lay row, and I really do like deadlifting. But I really do think that, especially when trying to attack two sports at the same time, and this is for anybody that wants to do like jujitsu and lifting, or basketball and lifting, you mentioned volleyball and lifting, and you really want to attack the other sport and do well at it, you need to learn what days you can put your foot on the gas and what days you need to put your foot on the brakes, especially when it comes to, you know, when you're in the gym, because I'm not feeling like that every single day. I'm not feeling like I can pull 725 every single day that I train. But on that day, I came into the gym and I had an immense amount of energy. I don't even know why, because I rolled that morning. I did jujitsu that morning. So I came into the gym that afternoon and I still felt really, really good. And as I was pulling, everything felt good. So I knew, okay, today I can test myself and see what I can do. And I did that. I pulled 725 on that day. And there are multiple days that I feel like that. But a lot of people ask me, how can I get stronger while, you know, getting better at jiu-jitsu? That literally takes time, because the first thing I think that's going to take precedence, and I think you can use this with almost any type of sport, is number one, getting used to the way you'll be expending energy in that sport. Okay, so I always talk about the way you're wasting it, not even wasting, but the way you're performing on the mats will get better over time. Your first few months in jiu-jitsu, you're going to feel super sore and super tired every day after you finish, because all of those movements are different for you. You're not putting your body in those positions often, and it's going to tax you a lot. So don't expect to be hitting PRs in the gym for the first few months that you start that new sport, whatever it is. Allow your body to get used to the movements and the positions that you're going to be putting yourself into, and then over time, you'll be able to start making progress in the gym again, because your overall recovery is going to be better. When you do get used to the demands of that specific new sport, then you could potentially start pushing yourself in the gym, whether that takes 3 months. For me, I think it took me 6 to 7 months to get myself up to doing jiu-jitsu 5 days a week. And then after that, I was able to start seeing progress in the gym again. But initially, it was a regression in my lifts, getting used to jiu-jitsu while I was still trying to lift, but I was feeling like crap every single day that I was in the gym. And then as jiu-jitsu, and I wasn't wasting as much energy on the mats, and I was recovering much better from the mats, I was able to come to the gym and start progressing again while I was also continuing to progress on the mats. So initially it's a give and take. Like, it's not everyone wants, like, we all want to get stronger while we're getting better at this other sport. It's possible, but it's something that takes time. And like I said, you have to know when you got to put your foot on the gas in the gym. Days that you could feel it. And then days where you're not feeling as good, you got to be smart on those days and literally just do what you can and, you know, just progress in that fashion.
In jiu-jitsu and in the school that you go to, it's probably, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm imagining that it's probably kind of hard to like overtrain and really mess it up, because you probably have some pretty sound coaching over there. Or are there guys over there that are still like reckless, like you might see some of the people here in this gym? Like we have people that coach in here and we have people that will program in here, but you're still kind of left to your own, you know, you can still like add whatever, like no one's going to stop you, you know, just adding more weight. So I would imagine the way that just jiu-jitsu works is like you can't really just randomly roll with a black belt, and you can't really randomly do these things too intensely. But maybe I have the wrong perception of it.
There's different factors. So I'll first talk about the gym so we can have a reference point. Overtraining in the gym, very easy to do, because if you're given or you're doing a program, you're like, I'm going to do everything on this program, and you're going to try to, and you might lift too heavy of a load and injure yourself because that load was too heavy, but you tried, right? And you failed and you injured something, or you're just doing too much volume and you keep going and you can't recover.
Or your percentages are slightly off. There's a bunch of different things. Yeah,
exactly. So we know how we can overtrain in the gym. In jiu-jitsu, it's kind of different, because like in most schools, you'll have a portion of the class where you'll do drilling and the professor will teach something and you'll drill that. And then you have your other portion of the class where you'll spar. Okay. And typically with newer individuals, when you spar, you know, you can take breaks between sparring sessions. You don't have to spar every single round. And most people don't. To your point of like rolling with a black belt, some schools are different, but like, you know, in my school, usually the black belt will ask, you know, or if they see a white belt that's not rolling, they'll be like, let's roll. And they'll take it easy on that white belt. They'll let them work things, etc. So in that essence, that's not how you'd overtrain on the mats. The way you'd overtrain, I would say, would be maybe doing too many sessions too quickly. So there are people that, you know, do take it step by step when they start. So they initially start going 3 times a week. But then there are people who are like, I want to go 5 or 6 times a week, and they can't really recover. But, you know, even if you do that, you'll get yourself to a place where you can recover. But I do think it's kind of difficult, I'd say, to overtrain during jiu-jitsu. The main type of injuries that are going to happen are injuries that happen from rolling with another individual. Maybe your partner, they held a Kimura for too long, or they did it too quick and they tore something. That doesn't happen often, by the way, but that can happen.
And sometimes you're so new that you don't even know what you're in.
Exactly. You don't know when to tap.
You're like, I'm not sure what this guy, and then you're like, oh, whoops.
And that's why also there are upper belts, because those generally, a blue belt, purple belt, brown belt, black belt will know when to let go of something. Generally, if they have a hard head, maybe they won't, but generally they will. And then also, you could injure yourself, and I did this. This is partially how I tore my meniscus. A black belt had me in a leg lock, and I turned the wrong way, and he held it. It wasn't necessarily his fault, though, because I turned the wrong way quickly, okay? And when I did that, I felt something. It got worse over time, and then my meniscus initially tore.
It's kind of important for you to know that's the wrong way to go.
It's the wrong way to go. But in those situations, like, you know, if you don't know it, so those are things that can happen. But I'd say it is much harder to overtrain in jiu-jitsu. And I also get asked often, you know, what is cardio that you would do to get better at jiu-jitsu? I always just say, just do more jiu-jitsu. So the reason why I don't take any breaks now, and I don't necessarily need to take breaks on the mats at all, is because in those sparring sessions, I don't stop sparring. So we'll have maybe 6 to 9, some days if we have more time, maybe 10 sparring sessions after class. And they're like 6 to 8 minute rounds. And you have the choice to, you know, you can choose different partners, and you have choices. You can also sit out for different rounds if you need a rest. Just don't stop rolling. That's what I would say to those individuals. Because when you're really, really tired and you're coming from a strength athlete background, us as strength athletes, when we get on the mats and do jiu-jitsu, we want to push and use a lot of strength to do these things. But in situations where you're really, really tired, you can't, and you don't have strength. And then you have to start relying on the technique that you've been being taught. And that's when your jiu-jitsu, you can actually use your jiu-jitsu, because a lot of times things are going to be a little bit easier for you, because you can someone puts you in something, you can bicep yourself out of an arm bar, which I've done before. Or you just do a lot of things because you're really strong, but you can't do that when you're tired. So, you know, a strength athlete doing this sport, you don't have to go on an assault bike or a treadmill or do anything else outside of, if you have the time, literally just roll more and continue rolling when you're tired. it's honestly kind of difficult to get injured, unless like it's a partner situation or it's your fault for doing something wrong.
You haven't stopped deadlifting, right? You've been deadlifting. Have you been doing more like reps and stuff? And I know you mentioned the row, but people that are listening to this probably can't just do a row and then get whatever that percentage was of your max, 90-something% of your max.
Yeah.
So how would somebody be able to pick up some tips from this? What are some things that you did, like maybe with your deadlift? I know you said you haven't been squatting, so maybe
I have been.
Oh,
but
you
I've
have
been
been
squatting much lighter, and
so maybe that's contributed partly too, because maybe your back is well rested.
yeah. So I've been doing a lot of tempo work around the board. So not just on my compound movements with my squat, bench, and my deadlift, but also my accessory movements, controlling the movement through ranges of motion with time. So I do tempo squats. So that would be like 4 or 5 seconds down, 4 or 5 seconds up with 315, with 315 and more plates. And I've found personally that that's helped my knees out a lot rather than squatting heavier often. I do pause deadlifts and tempo. So there was a long time ago when you told me to, control my eccentric more. And I've made that a staple of deadlifting all throughout. No matter how heavy I deadlift, even if it's in the sixes, I always control the eccentric, and I do a lot of pause deadlifts.
Yeah, I think people people tend to drop their shoulders on a deadlift. It's hard to explain, but a lot of times and I'm pretty guilty of this, but like as you go to come down in a deadlift, people they discontinue lowering their hips.
Yeah.
And they just like lower their upper body, they let the weight clank on the ground. And I think you're always better off just trying to, and it's hard, and it's going to reduce the amount of weight that you use significantly, especially in the beginning. It might reduce the weight by 50 pounds or even 100 pounds at first, but you'll get used to it over a period of time. And I think you want to try to keep yourself connected to the bars the way that I try to look at it. And you want to kind of keep that constant tension, almost the way a bodybuilder would keep the constant tension on a squat. They kind of get that, they get into that rhythm where they're just kind of like pumping a lot of blood into the legs.
Yeah.
And it's very similar in that deadlift. You want to try to keep yourself connected to the bar. Don't let the weights crash on the ground. Try to control them. Pretend that the weights are fragile. Pretend that they're going to break. If you drop them, they're going to break. So you just follow them down, stay tight with it, and then do your reps repeatedly. And they'll all start to look the same.
Yeah.
Rep number 5 and rep number 1 will look the same. And that's where, we get back into that topic of overtraining. If Nsima says, Mark, I think it'd be great for you to do 3 sets of 5 with this percentage of your max. Well, the percentage that he may give me or associate to my strength, my 5 reps might look way different than whatever you had in mind for the way my 5 reps should look like. And this is why it's so important. And I hate being like a technique monger, but it's important that you adhere to trying to do the lift the right way.
Yeah.
Like do the lift better and you'll be better. You'll be stronger. Trying just to add weight is great. And occasionally kind of rolling the dice, so to speak, and having a dicey set of 3, like I'm in favor of that. I'm in favor of letting it go, turning up the music a little bit and having some intensity. But what is that going to cost you? Can you afford to do that? I've had Andrew, go nuts a couple times on some sets of squats and things like that, and where he's done, maybe I said, hey, let's see what it looks like if we do about 12 reps, and he's gone on to do like 24 reps, right?
Yeah.
And then I'd be like, okay, well, you're kind of, we've got like one accessory movement, and then you're done because you just absolutely killed yourself on the squat, which is great. I applaud that. But now we got to account for that because now you're dipping into your reserves. What is this? He's had lower back issues. What is this going to do to your lower back? What is this going to do to your recovery? It's something you have to really think about. If you're going to really roll the dice, now we have to think about this. And I think in our effort to get better, we're always just thinking, I just want to lift more.
Yeah.
I just want to do more.
Yeah.
But you could just simply lift the weight better and you'll be stronger. And I think that's how you were able to do the 725 deadlift with ease, because you've been practicing your form on these other movements. You slowed down the squat. So even though the weights are lighter, it's still not easy.
It's difficult.
I mean, you wouldn't show up if it was really easy. Like what would be the point in doing it?
Uh-huh.
You're still creating a stimulus that's strengthening. You're still creating a stimulus that's probably good for your joints, your ligaments, your tendons. You're still creating a stimulus that's probably good for hypertrophy, helping you keep your muscle mass, helping you stay lean. You're still eliciting enough stimulus for your metabolism to burn some calories.
Yeah.
And so for that reason, it is strengthening. It is something that's strengthening you. Now it's not a, it's not a 622 squat, which is your best in knee sleeves, but it's 405 or 365 with really good form, right?
Yes. And okay, so you said some really, really big things that I don't want people to miss. Number one, when I first started controlling the eccentric on my deadlift, after you told me a few years back, my deadlift went down initially for quite a few months.
Depressing.
It sucks. It sucks. But if I didn't make that change to my deadlift would not be where it was then, where I got to 755 and where it is now. That was a big concept for me to understand. The second big thing you mentioned was having every single rep of every single set look the same. I still keep that principle with literally everything I do. And even when it comes to working with much heavier loads, I try to have that single look just as good as when I'm working with a 405 deadlift. I want my 725.
And in jiu-jitsu even, right? Your drills.
Exactly. I want everything to look perfect. But the last thing is Mike O'Hearn. I'm mentioning Mike O'Hearn for a reason. He
just cranked out a baby.
He cranked out a baby.
10
Congrats.
pound.
Yeah,
congrats.
His name is Titan. Titan Maximus O'Hearn.
How sick
His
is
name's
that
really
name?
Titan.
Yeah.
Oh, that kid's gonna be a badass.
Yeah.
The teacher's like, "What's your name?" Titan. That's dope.
Like, okay.
Yeah. But the reason why I mentioned Mike is anyone can say anything they want to say
Because you
about
out-angled him.
I did. I did out-angle him. But also,
He's your supplier.
okay, I've always been impressed with how Mike controls the weight that he works with, no matter what he does,
Even
no matter how
his
heavy
facial
it is.
expression.
Even his facial expression. And because of how old he is, and he's still able to lift with not just the weights. I honestly, I do care about the weight he lifts, but I just admire the control he has over that
It's
heavy load.
literally like he's lifting it with his brain.
And that's partially why I started doing all of that. It's not everything that I do that's tempo, but I make it a big part of what I do because I have noticed that it's had a great effect on my elbows, my shoulders, my knees, the subluxation that I was talking to you about. And the subluxation is right before dislocation. This is happening in jiu-jitsu a bit. My shoulder would slip out of place. It was totally dealt with by doing a lot of tempo work for my shoulder. So that's a big concept of what I do now in terms of lifting in jiu-jitsu. I do a ton of tempo work. I still have days where I lift heavier and it's not as tempo focused, but it's a staple part of what I do because controlling that load, it helps a lot with your joints. It helps a lot with strengthening over time, but it takes patience and it takes working with lighter loads that you'd usually think are a joke.
It's hard to find information on, but there's something that's called strength aerobics, which sounds like two opposites slammed together, right? But strength aerobics was talked about a lot by Yuri Vershansky. I hope I'm saying that name right. One of the godfathers of strength and conditioning. And he talked about it quite a bit. And basically it was just the idea of just what you're talking about, just tempo lifting, very, very slow eccentric work. And for anybody that's ever had an injury that's listening right now, you ever had a shoulder problem or an elbow or a knee, it doesn't really matter what it is. You could take any exercise and get about a 6-second descent going on any lift that you think is going to help the area. And it's brutal. It is so taxing and so difficult to do. There's many variations of it as well, but strength aerobics specifically is usually done in a bodybuilding fashion. And what I mean by that is there's no pause at the bottom and there's no resting at the top. And there's and you basically just want to try to keep the weights moving the entire time. And it is so difficult. But anyone that's listening right now that's had a pec problem, that's had an elbow issue, just give it a shot. Try it out on a bench press. And the kind of weights that you're going to use, 30% of your max, maybe. I mean, it's going to be challenging, So if you bench 300 pounds, try it first. The first week you try it with 95 pounds. Try it with some chump change, to get used to it, to give it a good try. And then if you wanted to actually transfer over, I mean, that's more rehabilitation type work. If you wanted to transfer over into strength, you're going to have to work up and start to use a little bit more weight.
Yeah.
But the cool thing about it is, if you do a set of 6 reps that way, the amount of time under tension that you get is still enormous. So you're still underneath that bar for a really long time. So it's something that everyone should give a shot to. And from a metabolic perspective, you feel like you're dying. I mean, it costs you a lot. It takes a lot of energy to lift that way. And you can see us demonstrating we're watching some of this on the YouTube here, lifting super slow. And man, is it boring. And it's boring. I mean, it's flat out boring to do 5 sets of 5 on a bench press with 225 pounds is extremely boring for people, but it can get you strong. It's something that you should, I've said this in seminars all the time. You're not going to get thrown in jail. No one's going to come up to you and tell you you're lifting the wrong way by you doing the lift correctly. Like, don't be afraid to have the strength to take weight off the bar, have the strength to do the lift the right way. And it's hard. It's very difficult. You get in a training session and your training partner's using 4 plates and you're like, oh shit, man, I'll just use 4 plates. I wanted to do that so badly the other day. I was lifting with Zach, but Zach is he's strong right now. And I just came off a meet. So my strength is a lot of times your strength goes up for the meet, you peak for the meet, and then it comes back down a little bit. I'm coming back down and I'm about to head back up. I wanted to kick his ass. I wanted to do more weight than him, but I was like, no, the time to do more weight than him is in the meet.
Yeah.
Doing it right here, right now doesn't matter. I already benched more than him. So it doesn't, what am I proving? And I'm just probably going to hurt myself.
Yeah.
So there's no reason to roll the dice at that moment.
I'd imagine that teaches or strengthens you mentally, right? To have to endure this long, slow process of a workout. It does sound terrible.
Yeah, it really does. It's we talked about like dopamine on the podcast before. You're not getting that rush. You're like starving yourself away from it. You're like, this sucks. I want to do this, and you're starving yourself away from something that you enjoy in place of something that could potentially make you great. And you're like, man, I can't stand watching this other guy lift more weight than me, but we were making fun of Nsima the other day. He was doing his pen lay rows, and he put 2 dimes on each side. We're like, dude, just put on a quarter. He's like, nope. We're like, come on, bro, just put on a quarter. He's like, nope.
A question from Instagram from BV Toms. How many times a week should you be deadlifting?
I think that totally, first off, depends on the type of deadlift you do. The reason I say that is you can do conventional, you do sumo. I do think there's a strength in both, but a trend that I've noticed with individuals that pull mainly with conventional, and a lot of the time it has to do with the way they're pulling, they usually feel a lot of lower back stress. And the more they do conventional deadlift during the week, the more lower back stress they feel. And it's not sustainable, at least until you get to a point where it doesn't strain your lower back at all. I could sumo deadlift 3 to 4 times a week and be okay because I don't feel strain in my back when I'm doing that. It doesn't strain me much because of my positioning. I'm able to get into a very upright torso. My hips are used to the stress of the sumo deadlift now. So I would say as many times as you can where you can recover for the next week, whether that's 1 time each week or 2 times each week. You just need to make sure that you can recover from session to session, week to week. And then obviously you want to vary session to session. So if you do want to do a deadlift twice a week or build yourself to that, if you're doing it once a week currently, then maybe if you're deadlifting once a week right now, deadlift a second day with a much lighter load, maybe for some speed work.
That's exactly what I was going to ask, because I was we have 2 bench days, basically, one of them being speed day. So if it made sense to do a speed day on deadlift,
and then
cool.
On that second day, you could, over time, you could build the intensity you do on that second day so that you build yourself to a point where you can deadlift with a decent intensity on both days, even though one day is going to end up being heavier than the other.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you could go out. There was a point where I was sumo deadlifting 3 times a week, but I didn't feel too much stress with that, partially, again, because it's a sumo deadlift for me. I can get into a good position with that. But personally, if I did that with conventional, my lower back would be fried. So I couldn't conventional deadlift 3 times a week, but I still add it in once a week. Every now and then I'll be doing conventional.
I think the main thing is you always have to think about like what's next, you know? So if you can certainly train a deadlift multiple times a week, there's not any problem with that at all. And I would say that 2 is probably a good number, because 3 is fine, but most people are not going to be able to handle deadlifting that many times a week, especially if they're adding in squats and they're adding in bench. Now it just starts to get a little hectic, and it might be a little too much. 2 times a week sounds very reasonable. As he's mentioning, you can go light, heavy. You can even go light, medium, heavy, and rotate those around. There's a lot of different ways that you can explore this. I know that James Smith and Chad Wesley Smith are guys that have implemented light, medium, heavy workouts where they do things 3 times a week, bench, squat, deadlift 3 times a week, and they just rotate it around by going light, heavy, or going light, medium, and heavy. That seems to work really well for a lot of people.
Yeah,
but you have to always think about like what's coming next. Like so if I'm going to deadlift 3 times a week, how long am I going to do that for? And what's that for? In my opinion, that would be you're working on your frequency. You're trying to maybe increase your work capacity. So with that being said, the objective during this block of deadlifting 3 times a week wouldn't be that you lift the most amount of weights that you've ever lifted before. The weights would probably be lighter, and maybe you're trying to get some extra volume in there, and maybe you're just practicing. You know, in jiu-jitsu and in yoga and things like that, they call it a practice. They call it a school. You go to a school. He mentioned even having like a professor, right? You have like a teacher. You have like an instructor. But for some reason, when we walk into a gym, everyone's IQ is instantly cut in half, and no one's there to practice anything. It's not a practice. You're just lifting weights, bro. And it becomes so different than what it should be. But it should be a practice, and it should be drills. You know, people that do drills and people that get the drills correct, they develop these skills, and those skills can be applied to the game. But we don't think about lifting weights that way for some weird reason. But if you're going to deadlift 3 times a week, that's what you would be thinking of. You'd be thinking of, I'm trying to acquire a skill. I really suck at deadlifting. I don't like my form. I don't like my positioning. It just doesn't look the way that it should. And I'm going to work on it until I get it right, until I get it correct. But you're also not going to lift more weight until you get it correct. You're going to do it until it's the right way. Once it's mastered and once it's the right way, now we can probably move into deadlifting twice a week, maybe even deadlifting only once a week. If you're going to deadlift as heavy as possible, then you probably only want to deadlift like once a week. But deadlifting as heavy as possible, and if you're somebody that really does like to train heavy and intensely, then you're going to have to figure out, does the deadlift currently look the way that you want it to? And if it doesn't, that's when you're going to want to say, okay, man, I don't want to do this. I want to just deadlift 405 every week. But if you want to start deadlifting 505, you probably need to do something different. It's probably time to break up those deadlifts. What do they call that? You want to spread out your fatigue. So take the intensity of going 100% every day and go 30% 3 times a week. That would still give you like around 90%, right? This is just a hypothetical situation. You don't have to actually only use 30% of your max, but it's just an example. You probably, even if you're practicing, you probably still want to use around 60% of your max to have it transfer over properly.
Yeah.
But that's what you would want to do. You want to say, you know what, it doesn't look the way that it should, and so I'm going to practice it a lot. When I did my bodybuilding show, I had to practice posing. I practiced it once a week for a little while, and I was like, oh, this is not looking the way it's supposed to. Then it was like 3 times a week, and it was like, I better do this a couple times a day. Like, I'm really bad at this. And so I started working on it multiple times a day until I got it good enough for me to get on a stage and present what I presented and do the best job I possibly could.
Yeah. I remember the 3 or 4 training blocks that I did deadlift 3 times a week. That was because I needed to increase my frequency to learn my hip position. to get better at finding out where to place my hips. Because for a lot of people, they're like, when they're pulling, they don't know when to actually begin their pull. That was my big issue. I'd sometimes begin pulling too low. I'd sometimes begin pulling too high. And it's funny when I watch videos, like old YouTube videos of me deadlifting at the old gym, you'll see my face. It's all effed up. And like, I'm getting all hype and stuff before my deadlift just because like I had to use a lot of force to actually get that bar off the ground. So you're right. When I did deadlift 3 times a week, I did that mainly so that I had so much frequency that I was able to practice that movement as much as possible. If I'm only doing it once a week, I wouldn't get enough practice in. I wouldn't be able to actually do it enough to really get better at performing the lift. But then when I got to a point where my hips were snapping in the right spot every single time, after that, I then decreased my frequency to deadlifting twice a week, and that was good enough. So that's exactly what you mentioned right there.
You think about it, like if we were going to like practice self-defense, let's say that you had a weapon, right? Well, it wouldn't be a great way to practice self-defense if I've never practiced it before and we're going 100% and you're hitting me with a baseball bat or something, right? Like that wouldn't be a good way to do it.
No.
First of all, you would have probably something soft at first because we would not want to like hurt each other, right? And you'd say, all right, well, here's the different holds, here's the different positions to disarm this bat from me, or knife or gun or whatever it might be. And we would do it slow, and we would drill it and drill it and drill it. And you'd say, okay, well, now we're using a real bat, and now you got to really, I'm going to actually swing this thing. You got to really be paying attention, but it would still be at 60%, and then it would go to 70, same thing, right? Because you can't learn things that are extremely hard and extremely intense with full-on intensity without doing it slowly first. I mean, you have to, crawl before you walk, and you have to walk before you run, and you have to run before you can sprint. I mean, these are all things that have been ingrained into our body forever, and so you're going to have to learn these things and take these steps slowly. And if you apply some of the things that Nsima is sharing today, he's talking about jiu-jitsu, he's talking about lifting, he's talking about work, and he's talking about increasing these things over a period of time. You can apply that to anything that you have going on in your life right now.
I'm just thinking about maybe possibly adding another deadlift day for myself because I do want to. I want to hit a pretty big deadlift in the next by like summertime. We'll say. How long would somebody take the weight down and do like multiple deadlifts per week before they decide to test what they've been doing?
So how long would a training block be? Like, yeah.
You tell me.
Okay, so first off, right now you're deadlifting once a week, right?
Correct.
How's it look? Like on that day, is it generally like a day where you do X amount of work, then you do a heavy pull, or does it look different each week?
It looks different every week, but lately it's been like a heavy set of like 3, or I'll do a double, and then I'll stick at a certain weight and then hit that for like 5 sets.
Okay, so that's a heavier day.
Yeah.
I would say on your other day, now it'd be on your other day, I would suggest that you work on some potential pause deadlifts.
Yeah.
But make sure that you're working with the pause deadlifts that are pretty dang light. So after every single set, you could do 2 or 3 more reps, because especially as a conventional puller, pause deadlifts are rough on your back. And given that you have back issues, you don't want to do pause deadlifts with too heavy of a load where every single set you're feeling super taxed, because you won't recover before your next deadlift session. So that would be my suggestion specifically for you. That would be really beneficial for you, especially since sometimes you do lose. I've seen your deadlift. Sometimes you do lose your position in your deadlift. And I've personally found that pause deadlifts, depending on where you pause, for some people, if they lack lockout strength, it's good to pause at the knee and have a very strong, swift lockout. But for a lot of people who are having problems off the floor, the better place to pause is literally the inch that you break off the floor. That's what I worked on for a long time, because I'd lose position in my deadlift. Every time at the start, I'd lurch forward a little bit. So I worked with like 315 initially, where I'd break the floor and then I'd hold once the bar is like a few inches off the ground, and I'd finish through lockout. And I slowly built that up. So nowadays, I don't lose position in my deadlift at all. So
this is my most recent one. I don't even remember the weight. 295.
Yeah.
That looks pretty clean, though.
It
I
do-
think your grip needs to come out a tiny bit, too. Make a little bit more room for your legs. Your legs are getting bigger.
Thanks.
Legs are getting a little thicker.
You notice on every rep though, like since you don't come to a full stop, your second and your third rep,
They're always better.
they're always better because you're starting with a higher hip position too. You're starting where
Oh,
you
really?
should start. Yeah. if you look at where you started your first rep, you started that rep like lower. Your hips were lower. and
It's
then
almost as if rep number 2, 3, 4, and 5 are done as a partial range of motion lift. So it's almost as if somebody stuck mats underneath the plates, but they didn't really. You now have the proper tightness, and now all you're doing is shifting your hips back. You kind of see how that works?
Yeah.
You're shifting your hips back
Well,
away from the bar.
It always feels way easier to do the second
Yeah.
rep, no matter. I always say if I can pull it up once, I can get at least 2.
Yeah.
Like no matter what the weight is, because of getting in the right position.
That's because when you're coming down, you're getting into the position you should be in. So a good idea would be to, like, when you do come down, I need to put my face up to the mic.
Thanks.
When you come down, like, watch this again. Okay, you lost position on your first rep, your hips came up. When you come down, I think Ed Cohn does this, maintain tightness even when you're on the ground and hold that position for a little bit and then do your second pull so you can feel where that position is. And then what your goal is to try to get that positioning on your first rep.
Yeah.
That's where you should be.
And you're not bouncing, but you're reflecting off the ground a little bit.
Yeah.
And you want to stay a little tighter than that, so you
Okay.
don't. So because if we get rid of that, then it will be almost similar to everything is like the first rep. So that's what we want to do. We want a little bit. It's good control. It's a good lift. It's actually a very good lift.
Yeah.
And you're not like accelerating downward, but a little tighter, probably a little slower, just a little more concentration, and almost like maybe kiss the ground or float the ground rather than bump the ground.
Okay. Yeah, I was definitely cheating by getting a little bit of oomph off the ground.
I also think that having you deadlift with a mat or two underneath the plates would be a good idea, and also mixing that up with a deficit deadlift here and there. Deficit deadlift obviously would be like quite a bit harder.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
With putting it on blocks or something, I will definitely have to go significantly lighter. I don't know what it is about that position. But
Well, that's because that's the spot where you tend to push forward a little bit.
oh, okay. So okay.
You tend to push the weight away from you a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, and that's where I really feel my back. Like especially like off of the wagon wheels or something. That
Yeah.
level is my back is like, "Oh, hey, what's up?" That's the spot. And then that's when it's like it's all over. Like
Well,
I can't pull.
And because of that, that would be a great area to
Right.
know and understand, like, okay, I normally can deadlift around 300 pounds for some reps, but because this is more challenging, I should probably only use like 225 to 250 range. Just know ahead of time. It's like a close grip bench. If your close grip bench sucks, well, now you're going to probably use 50 pounds less, or for some people, a beltless movement. If you're going to do like beltless squats, you're going to just have this understanding of, I'm probably going to use a lot less weight.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Yeah. But I think if anyone's going to take away a big concept of this whole thing, the biggest concept is it's a give and take. Like, you want to get better at something. A lot of we usually want to do it immediately, but it's usually going to take a little bit of a back off, a little bit of a reevaluation, giving ourselves time to get better at it, and then building up from it again. So like the deadlift might take a little bit of a rebuild. It's going to take an ego check. You're going to have to lower it a bit, and then you're going to have to move forward. Doing jiu-jitsu and lifting, your lifting is going to take a check. Okay, you're going to have to back off a little bit. That's not necessarily a problem, but you get used to the expenditure, you'll be able to start getting stronger again. If you try to take on too much at once, injury can happen. So that's why, like I mentioned, you got to know when to put your foot on the gas, know when to put your foot on the brake. You got to be able to know how to handle yourself as an athlete.
And if you think about like what is an injury, an injury is you got hurt, right? But there's a lot of ways to hurt yourself. Like overdoing something is a way of hurting yourself because you're limiting your progress. It's like you're trying to go forward, and we're talking a lot about the things that you can afford to do. Well, I'm sure Nsima, and just like anybody else, wants to be bigger and leaner, right? Like, even though he's already big and lean, who doesn't want to be bigger and leaner?
Right.
But if he got down to like 5% body fat, that would be awesome. We'd be like, hey man, you're shredded. But it might impact your jiu-jitsu. and it might potentially hurt your lifting. However, if it's done over a long period of time and it sort of naturally happens just because of your diet and just because of your training, naturally,
I didn't even catch that.
if it just naturally happens, then maybe it's something that's more achievable and more sustainable, something you can actually live with. But a lot of times, if we start chasing after one thing way too hard, then we might lose the other. Start chasing after jiu-jitsu with everything that you have. Well, I'm sure as you get closer to Worlds, I'm sure your strength will probably still be good in here, and you still have some goals and still have some things. But there's really not a lot of great reasons to try a 755 deadlift the week that you're going to compete. Might be good to still be strong, but not a great time to try like a PR deadlift out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to chase after this thing, you're chasing down a dream, chasing down a goal, and you want to make sure that you obtain that goal, and you don't want anything to kind of pull you away from that. So I like the message because you're sharing that, you're chasing after multiple things, but you're putting the right amount of time and effort into each thing. Not killing yourself on any one thing,
Yeah.
One of the guys that he trains here on the weekends, his name's Justin. He wants to pull 500. He's asking basically like, so trying to pull 500 to pull 500, like, should he not try to pull 500 to get there?
What's the most? Well, I mean,
Who
the
knows?
answer, what's
Just
the most
under.
pulled yet?
We'll just pretend it's just under that.
Just under 500. The thing I would say is like, don't. It's a hard one because there's a point when you're there, but whenever I've hit a PR, at least a majority of the time, I've always had more in the tank. But the thing is, like, based on how my training's been going, I know that number is there for me, even though I've never touched it before, because of how I've built up my training up until that point. So I would suggest if you feel it's a Hail Mary, I'd say don't. But it's kind of hard because, like, I'm not telling you not to push yourself. I'm definitely not telling you not to push yourself. There are days where, like, even if you don't know you can absolutely know you can do it, you got to give it a shot. And if you fail, okay, you know what you got to work on.
Right.
Okay, I'm not saying don't fail, but I'm saying if like your best pull is 450 and you pulled that, it was really hard, don't go for 500. If your best pull is 480 and it was kind of fast and maybe that 500 is kind of there and you want to give it a shot. But just know the range,
Right.
Know that range leading up to that lift. I think that's super important.
Yeah, because I know, Mark, in the past you've said, if powerlifters want to get better, they should not powerlift.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. I mean,
So-
powerlifting is bench, squat, deadlift for 1 rep max, right? That's powerlifting. And so, I think a really easy chunk of advice is to say, hey, you know what? Do sets of 8 for 2 weeks. Do sets of 6 for 2 weeks. Do sets of 3 for 2 weeks. And then try a single.
That's a hell for a powerlifter.
It is. It's hard. It's really hard, and to, but a lot of times when you lift lighter and you really practice and practice and practice, that's when you'll get better. You can also, there's so many different techniques that you can utilize. For this person in particular, you could try like a reverse band deadlift, just a deadlift 500. Why not come in one day and do a reverse band deadlift and pick up 515 just to feel like a badass, just to feel like a tank. You'll feel like $1 million and you'll know like, okay, well, that's going to be manageable at some point. It didn't feel that hard and the bands are helping me, but they didn't do everything for me.
Yeah.
And even doing a partial range of motion, picking something up out of a rack, maybe you pick up 405 for a set of 8 out of a rack and you're like, shit, man, I've manhandled 4 plates for 8 reps. I could probably pull 500 off the ground. Just, you want to figure out a way to give yourself a confidence boost. And sometimes when you don't have a lot of lifting experience, when you deadlift 405 for, sets of 5 and you deadlift 455 for a few triples and stuff, you still don't understand that you have that 500-pound deadlift in your back pocket. So you might have to do some mess around with a couple things to trick himself. But whatever the case is, I agree with Nsima a lot. It's like, it shouldn't be this like max, it shouldn't be this like 11 out of 10, it should be a 9. When he does go for it, he should, it's so much better for everyone to say, hey man, it looked like you could have done like 525 today.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. on Instagram. Someone just said reps over 5 just kill me. It was funny because when we were talking about the treadmill, and you're like, yeah, if you just put it at an incline and walk for like 2-3 minutes, you're gonna really feel it. And Zach was like, oh my god, are we running a marathon? Like, dude, oh my gosh, chill out.
One thing I want to say though, as far as the dual athlete thing is concerned, stretch, yo. Okay. And I get a lot of flack from some people in the strength community for promoting stretching, just because, in strength sport, there's a massive...
Static stretching don't work.
There in strength sport, there is a massive benefit. Let's not like beat around it. There's a massive benefit to being very tightly bound. Shoulders tight so you're not, moving around the bench press. Having fairly sometimes tight hips so that you can reach a certain level of depth in the squat, but you don't go too low since you're over, too mobile. But a majority of people in strength are not hypermobile. I'd say that the people that have the most risk of having a problem stretching and doing strength sports are those people who naturally have they actually have something called hypermobility, where like they can just do all these crazy things. They don't need to stretch that often. But stretching, especially if you're doing something like jujitsu and lifting, etc., will make your life on the mat so much easier. And to be perfectly honest, like it's made my life in here so much easier too with executing a lot of my lifts. First off, I'm not saying it's having less pain. I guess like things will always feel difficult, but I don't think things should necessarily, and people may disagree with me on this, be painful. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, oh God, that hurts. I don't think it has to be that way. And by just stretching a bit, it helps that go away. Like I have a lot of people tell me, oh, I don't have to have a 30-minute, 40-minute warm-up before I come into the gym because I'm much more mobile and I can move better and my lower back doesn't hurt every single day because of stretching. LeBron James was on a podcast with his trainer recently. I know basketball is a much different sport, and I know we can't just apply things from basketball to lifting. But when I see a lot of these pro athletes and very, very high-level trainers promoting something like static stretching, even though some of the research within the strength community doesn't support it, I don't give a fuck. Yeah. I'm going to stretch, and I feel good doing it. I don't necessarily care that much. So stretching, I think, is very beneficial. Static stretching, maybe not right before you work out and come into the gym to do a heavy squat or deadlift, no. But afterwards, in the evening, later that day, it might be a good idea to do in terms of recovery. Not right before you lift if you're a strength athlete. Don't do it. No, don't do a 30-minute static stretching gym before you do your lifts. Do like, some dynamic mobility warm-up or something.
Right.
But stretch later on. It's not going to kill you. It'll probably help you feel better.
Yeah.
I've noticed massive benefits. People that comment on stretching videos on YouTube that I make on YouTube, massive benefits. Try it out.
Give it a damn shot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of times the criticism comes from people that never even tried it. And it's like, you don't even really have a leg to stand on right now. Now, if you tried it and you like blew out your back or something, then maybe you got an argument.
Yeah.
But most of the time, it's like somebody's trying to refer to some study, and like most of these studies are bullshit anyway. I think even stretching before you were to do something, I think is fine. And there's actually a lot of athletes will stretch before they do the vertical jump test. They'll stretch certain muscles in order to be able to fire and be able to flex other muscles better. So it's like, there's kind of a time and place for everything. And I think that static stretching, I don't know why anyone's ever been so critical of it, or even like calisthenics. These are basic movements that've been around forever. I don't see anything wrong with toe touches and star jumps and burpees, and like they're in like a crab walk, and like, are all these movements all of a sudden bad because they're not cool and they don't require an expensive machine? It's like, no, they're still great movements. Body weight movements are very difficult, but stretching, it makes a lot of sense to me. You're making your muscles tight, and now you're trying to lengthen them back out again,
Yeah, and it's like with anything. It's like, okay, you lift too much or you lift too heavy, you can injure yourself. You stretch too much and you go too deep, or someone's pushing you into a position, could pull something. Like everything just takes a little bit of finesse and a little bit of knowing your limit on what you can do. So it's not like it's bad. It's just like if you're not doing something in a smart way, of course it could be bad. So like whenever I hear, oh yeah, but you could pull this, or, someone said that that's not good because you could pull this. Well, then don't go that deep or don't go that far. Just like you shouldn't lift that heavy or you shouldn't lift that much.
Yeah. Do you do anything while you're stretching? Because it's again one of those things like the strength aerobics that you're just talking about. Like it's kind of like it's pretty taxing on the mind because it's boring, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So do you do anything to kind of like spruce it up to make it a little bit more tolerable?
Spruce it up.
Yeah.
Well, I do make stretching videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
With music, right? And my soothing voice. But I breathe, like I focus mainly on just like breathing through my nasal breathing. And I kind of just use it as a meditation, to be perfectly honest. If you want to have your TV on or something while you're like that's a perfect time to just chill, have something on.
That's
you know
true.
what I mean? You don't have to sit in a quiet room in darkness in the cold and,
It's too cold.
stretch.
Be all weird.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times too, we're always looking at like exercise or stretching as this like thing. And I know that the way that you usually do it, usually come into the gym and you usually go on the mats over there and you usually like actually stretch and it's something that you're like focused on. But it doesn't have to look the same way for everybody. And you can also just like when you're watching TV at home, if you're like, I should stretch my hip and I'm going to do a couch stretch while you're watching TV.
Yeah.
Go ahead and do it. Do 3 minutes on each side and then sit back down and be lazy. It doesn't have to be a 20-minute session. I think we're so attached to like if I don't do it all the time, if it's not a half an hour, that's the minimum requirement, 30 minutes, right?
Yeah.
If I don't do it this way, then it's not done the correct way and it doesn't mean anything. It's like no, it's still a form of stretching. It's like the 10-minute walks. Like what about doing 5 minutes of stretching 3 times a day? You could probably find a few minutes.
Yeah.
Kelly Starrett was the one that kind of pointed out to me. He's like, people very rarely get below parallel in the course of their day. He's like, and some people might go weeks and months without getting below parallel. He's like, even when you take a dump and even when you're sitting in your car and doing these things, your hips are still not below your knee. And he's like, people should just, when they're watching TV, just put their foot up on a high chair or put their foot up on the couch. He's like, that would put their knee above where their hip is. That would be a stretch.
Yeah.
He's like, but because they don't like, quote unquote, feel a stretch, they just don't think it's valuable in any way. But he's like, that could do so much for everyone's back and everyone's hips. And so, I mean, it doesn't have to always, your exercise and all these different things that you're trying to do, it doesn't always have to be this like rigorous, intense, crazy thing that's an hour long.
That's one of the big things I hear in terms of people like I don't have the time to spend 30 minutes or whatever minutes stretching a day. It doesn't, like you said, it doesn't have to be that long. You could break it up to sessions. You could do a short 10-minute thing, while you're watching TV. Like you have a lot of time. You have so much time to do it. It's not important enough for some people that they feel that they want to spend the time to do it. That's the thing.
Well, that's important to you should place that burden on yourself and say it that way. Just say it that way. Say like, I'm not placing enough emphasis on this and I probably should.
Yeah.
And I'm going to and then figure out where and when and how. In yoga, we hold positions for 3-4 minutes at a time. Could you hold I mean, I'm just trying to think of like the laziest way to do it, right? So can you hold these positions and watch TV at the same time? Sure. Absolutely could.
Kelly, I think he did the 10-minute squat or something.
Yeah.
That's something that
you just squat down.
10 minutes, decompress the back, you get a little bit of work in the Achilles and your hips. And if you could work into that you feel great afterwards. You feel like shit during, but like, yeah.
Heels down or?
Heels down? What do you mean?
Yeah, you're trying to keep your heels down.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of hard, but you can hold on to. I mean, I was just telling somebody the other day, like a couple times a day, they should just pump out some squats. They're just like do like 10 squats, just hold on to something because they were having a hard time hitting depth, and that's a form of stretching. That's a movement, right? That's this idea of these like 10-minute walks. You can do 10 push-ups every hour that you're awake. I mean, there's a lot of options in terms of strength. There's a lot of options in terms of being more fit and being in better shape. And it doesn't. There's a book that's called what is it? Shit, what is it called? It's called like oh shit, I'm gonna mess up the name of it, but it's something about don't run, just walk, and something about eating bacon or something like that. But it's a really great reference guide, and I actually based the War on Carbs book off of just the way that this book was laid out and the way that it looked. And the guy says you should never need any special clothing for exercise. He's like, you need to rethink the way that you think about exercise. He's like, if you're in a pair of jeans and you're in work clothes, he's like, you should be able to get in some form of exercise. He's like, and for me, it's just walking. Just go outside. Just go for a damn walk. Mm-hmm. He's like, yeah, sometimes it's hot. Sometimes you get a little sweaty because it's the summer or something like that. But he's like, you know, you don't want to set up all these boundaries towards fitness and towards exercising because it's so easy to talk yourself out of it. You're like, well, I got to go home and I forgot to bring my clothes today. And it's like, well, now you're just, now you're just fishing for a bunch of, I've heard people even say, I've seen people leave the gym and go back to their house to get their pre-workout, to have their pre-workout and come back to the gym. It's like, that's wild. Are you serious? Like, you really need that for your workout? You can't just exercise?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah, no, I never really thought of that. Pre-workout is a barrier for some people because if they don't have it, they can't work out. That is pretty rough.
Have you ever messed with pre-workout stuff?
In the past? Yeah, like when I was younger, I did. But the reason why I stopped taking pre-workout is because I was like, I don't want to have to need this to motivate me to get in the gym. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, caffeine's cool, but like it's when I started being like, oh God, I'm starting to really need this. Isn't good. So I put, you know, I had to take it off cold turkey, and my workouts suffered a little bit. That was when I was like mainly doing the bodybuilding thing, but then I got used to it.
How young people start on those pre-workouts and they're just recklessly downing them left and right. I mean, they're kind of dangerous.
They are, especially like, again, if you take too many and then you start stacking it. I did that stacking thing for a few weeks.
I haven't messed with any of that in a long time.
I did that for a few weeks when I was like 17. I stacked a few pre-workouts and it was just like, oof.
Yeah, back in my day, we had
the good stuff.
Yeah, we did. We had ephedrine, and
that was in the original Jacked, right?
Yeah. So yeah, like maybe
I'll check.
Ephedrine's been illegal for a pretty long time. We used to get mini thins from the supermarket, straight ephedrine, just straight up ephedrine. I mean, straight up like like fucking crack. Basically, it's speed.
Wait, mini thins? Like mini thins?
They're white. They're white little tiny pills that were like 25 milligram ephedrine tablets.
Wow.
And me and my friend, we would mix up these crazy like shakes before we would work out. We'd mix in and we didn't know what dosage was in it because we would take 2 packets of mini thins, which is like I don't know, let's see, 75 milligrams, 150 milligrams of ephedrine.
How old were you?
Freaking 17 or something. And then we would throw no-dos in there and we'd mix it with a Metrex shake.
Did he just say, I never did any pre-workout?
I used to. Well, I made pre-workout before they had it. I made it myself. I didn't know what it was called.
Jesus Christ. That's your own mixture of drugs and crack. And, oh my God.
Yeah. We used to, and then we'd throw aspirin in there too because it helps absorb it better. It was just fucking wild.
Look at Nsima's face.
Dude, like how are you not dead?
Well, it's the old ECA stack. It's ephedrine, caffeine, and aspirin.
Yeah. ECA.
Jeez.
Got to get up on your ECAs.
I thought I was kind of wild.
They used to be in, I think it was, maybe it was just called Speed Stack. I think maybe it's just a liquid, just American bodybuilding, the Eagle one. That one had that in there too.
Do you remember?
But I never used to drink any of those things. I always used to just do the straight up ephedrine.
Do you remember how you felt? Like, was your heart beating or was you
felt amazing?
Like, that just sounds so scary, bro.
Oh, it's wild. It's wild.
The good old days.
Yeah, the good old days.
Dang.
I don't know why they took that stuff off the market.
Me neither.
Good stuff.
I mean, look at you.
I don't know. I'm fine.
We should bring that back.
Yeah,
for tomorrow's deadlifts.
But so ephedrine disappeared, and then that's when I think BSN came out with their pre-workout. They had one of the first pre-workouts going, And then there was a few other companies that kind of followed. And when that stuff came out, I was like, this stuff's garbage compared to the old ephedrine that we used to take.
That's why you don't mess with it.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't need any of that bullshit.
Yeah, Ricardo on Instagram says that they still have that in Canada where you can get ephedrine. Like, man,
I think you can get it on the internet.
The interwebs.
Probably. You can get that shipped.
Yeah,
Most likely.
That sounds good. Yeah.
the good old days.
Yeah, I just feel like with the pre-workout stuff, it's sort of just like the taste and the feeling, and it becomes a ritual.
Yeah.
Because I think if you're taking it every day, that caffeine's probably not doing anything for you anyways. But it's just like, oh, this.
Well, some people just scoop it right into their mouth.
Yeah, there's that too. But I think
Right
it's
to
just
the face.
It's just like, okay, now I have my pre-workout drink, so now it's go time.
Yeah.
And then that's it. But I don't think it actually affects anybody. Like after a while, I don't think it really does
You
anything.
don't feel.
Yeah.
You're already so used to it, right?
Yeah,
At that point.
yeah.
That's why they start taking more and more caffeine. It's generally the
Yeah.
caffeine, but then there's also the beta. Some people like that feeling of that itch.
Hate that feeling.
I hate the itch.
Yeah.
Did you ever put any beta alanine in anything you took in pre-workouts or not?
I never mess with that, but they do put other stuff in there too, like B vitamins and stuff, and the niacin, right?
Niacin
and it
gets
makes
you
your
too.
skin all flush and
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, not a fan. I just like caffeine, like coffee.
Is that usually what you do for pre-workout now? It's just maybe a cup of coffee.
I usually have that big mug, and today I just need to drink the whole thing, but usually that'll last me like a few hours, and I'll finish it before I work out too. So I'm usually a little bit caffeinated before I work out, but I don't need to be.
I think some of it too is like almost like an insecurity. Like you're worried that if you're not like alert enough that you're not going to have a good workout. I kind of worry about that sometimes with the podcast. I'm like, I should have a cup of coffee.
Yeah, that's why I got a cup myself.
I'm sure the show would be the same either way.
It probably would be, but like
We should try it with those ECAs.
Talking 100 miles an
Just
hour.
Start a business on the podcast.
The only thing I remember from that was like, well, my friend had some complications from it, but I was always okay.
oh no.
And I remember, all I remember is getting like cotton mouth. You know, I remember I'd be like, damn, getting those like white things on the sides. You're like, fuck. That's what I remember. But my friend was like, man, he's like, I can't breathe. Actually, I remember one day we just OD'd and we had to leave the gym. Now I'm starting to come back to me. I was like, dude, I'm not feeling so good. He's like, me neither. I was like, let's get out of here.
Let's go have a pizza.
Yeah, we just took off.
Whoever you know those cartoons that guys made for you where you guys have those like massive eyes. I just pictured that.
Yeah.
When I think about that, that'd be a great little cartoon. Like it's oh god.
My
That is
brother
some scary
would
shit.
have some good stories on some of that stuff too. It was like you would just read about it in the magazine, so you just like go do it. And there was not a lot of information. There was no internet, so Muscle Media 2000 would talk about how it's good to take this before you work out, fasted, and it'll help burn fat. So I was like, oh, fucking cool, let's try it.
Muscle Media 2000?
Yeah,
What is that?
that was Bill Phillips' magazine. Bill Phillips
snap.
is the EAS guy.
Okay.
Yeah, he's the guy that brought creatine to the market and stuff like that back a million years ago.
Yeah.
But that magazine was great. The magazine had a lot of cutting edge information. They had, back 20 some odd years ago, it had information about low carb style diets. Fasting was a big thing even back then.
Mm-hmm.
There's somebody I'm working on getting on the podcast is the guy who wrote the Warrior Diet. You ever heard about the
Yeah,
Warrior Diet?
I heard about that a long time ago.
Yeah, so he wrote a book probably 25 years ago talking about eating one meal a day. And everyone's like, this guy's an asshole.
Everyone's doing that now.
I know. Now he's sitting back just twiddling his thumbs going, okay. Okay, yeah, I'm an asshole. Yeah. Okay, now everybody's like kind of understanding it. But that magazine really brought a lot of the top people to the forefront. Charles Poliquin was a big part of it, and that's where I got a lot of my information. But I remember reading about this, ephedrine stack and how it like burns fat and gets you fired up for a workout. So I was like, sure, let's go do it. But like me and my friend were reckless with it because we started taking it way too much because you get used to it just like you do with caffeine.
Yeah.
And it's ephedrine is like a asthma medication. So probably a good idea. They discontinued it.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I want to give a shout out to our boy, Mike O'Hearn. Congratulations on popping out a baby, or congratulations to his wife rather for popping out a baby. Congratulations to them both, man. What a really really cool thing for both of them. And sorry, Mikey, but it ain't all about you anymore, buddy. You're going to have to take a backseat to that baby. They had a 10-pound baby boy. Everybody seems to be healthy. And I'm just really excited for them. I issued a challenge to Mike O'Hearn. He and I can compete to see who has the best dad bod. But I issued a challenge to him, and this will be a tough one for him. But he accepted the challenge, so I'm excited to see if he'll actually follow through with this. He's supposed to make a post, I think, either today or tomorrow, and he's supposed to shut down his social media for about a week. I said, just enjoy the time with your wife and with your kid, and take it all in. And if you want to take pictures, and you could still do all that stuff, but just don't post anything. I said, don't film anything in the gym. Just take a moment. Take some time off. And the reason why I bring this up, and the reason why I've talked about this on this podcast before, is I think a lot of our youth could really use some help, and I think a lot of people could stop being so invested in the likes and in the comments, and stop allowing these things to be damaging. I think social media is great. I've built my business off the internet, so I'm forever grateful that it exists. I'm forever grateful for the connections that I've made via social media. I probably wouldn't know Andrew. I probably wouldn't know you. Like, it would just, we wouldn't know each other, or at least it would have probably happened in some different way or some different circumstances. But the internet is a great thing. It's fantastic. But I do think it's a good thing for everybody to fast away from it, at least on occasion, even if it's just for a day or just for a few hours, or whatever you can handle. So Mike is supposed to shut it down for a week. I hope he's able to do it, and I hope you guys follow his message, and I hope you kind of can understand and grasp it, because I think it's something that could help a lot of people with their mental health. Strength is never weakness. Weakness is never strength. Catch you guys later.